important thing to note before you do any job, especially a timing belt job. See all the lights that are on the dash first and note them, because you don't want to think that you've done something, especially with the engine light when you're doing a timing belt, because you have to strip a lot. And also you want to let the customer know, so you know what it was like, so they can't blame you for the engine light on. Sorted. This is a Volkswagen with a DSG gearbox. Customer brought the parts. We have issues with the engine before we even start. What could go wrong? Sorted. Timing belt today on this 2010 Passat. This is the 2-litre TDI, and if you like our channel, if you like what we do, please consider subscribing us and supporting us. Click all the links and all the bells down below and you'll see all our new videos. Right, so what we're going to do, we are going to do a timing belt and water pump on this. The customer complaint is that it is leaking, and I've been told that the water pump is leaking, and what the customer has decided to do, which is best, is just replace the whole timing belt, water pump, absolutely everything, because it's the best thing to do. So it's the one with the engine the other way around, because a lot of them you can take the front off, but this one we can't because the timing belt is at the side. And as you can see, you do have a lot less room doing it this way. So what I'm going to do is, oh, look at that. Not great. Bit of rub in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of this just so I can get a clearer picture. Remove these pipes, remove the fuel filter housing. I'm going to remove them first, and then we'll turn the camera back on. We'll actually get down to the timing belt. Sorted. We're just removing as many pipes as we can. You can see the water return pipe there, the DPF pressure sensor. Hopefully we can remove that. I'm sure we can. Yeah, there we go. That's a T30 torque, by the way. We're going to move that out of the way. Always, if you can, put the bolts back where you originally got them from. That way you won't lose them and you know exactly where they go. We're going to remove this now and try and get all these pipes, everything out of the way, so I've got as much room as possible down beside the timing belt. It's going to be your best friend doing a timing belt. Obviously we've got a lot more pipes here because we've got the extra pump here for the fuel, and you know, a lot more pipes than what you would normally have in the older cars and in petrol cars. But I'm marking everything with Tipex 1 mark or 2 marks, so I know once I disconnect it, I know exactly where to put it back. So Tipex is going to be your best friend. Out the expansion bottle, because we need to get to the main engine mount anyway, and that's going to be in the way eventually, and then it's going to make it easier for us to get the pump out. So again, I'm not going to be able to film it. It's just a couple, I think they look like 13mm bolts. And once I kind of take all this out, like I said, we'll be able to see the belt a lot easier and just make our life easier. Alright, look how much more room we have. It's great. The fuel pump's out of the way, or sorry, the fuel filter, the fuel pump, the expansion bottle, it's all out of the way, and it's just so much more room. There's a few little clips, just undo the clips and the top cover will come off. Now, again, never ever go off just from what you can see on the timing belt. You can never check a timing belt like this. You always have to take it off. Now, there is going to be a procedure to do this. You can loosen these bolts and twist the cams, but I just don't, because this can upset the data, and it can upset the engine if this is off. You can put it back on if you're looking at the live data and you know you do a few things, but honestly you just struggle for a few minutes trying to get the belt on with all the pulleys in the same place. You don't move them, it will go on. Sometimes what you have to do, again I'll show you, is to just take off, say like this idler here, to give the belt a little bit more slack, and then force the idler on afterwards. That's the way I do it. I've done it on all Volkswagens, and people, especially my older videos, people, oh, you can't do it that way, but believe me, you can. So that's why I'm going to do it now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jack up the car, take off the cover, take off the wheel, support it with axle stands and wheel chocks, and then we can actually take off the engine mounts, and we can actually take off the lower cover, and we can actually see what we're doing then. Sorted. Movies next is the splash guard, and it's a load of T25 Torques across the top and across the bottom, as you can just see there. Then we have to take off the tray underneath, so we can actually I wonder what that water is. I think that's just water on the tray. It's leaking there. But anyway, so we can actually support the engine. Once we take off this splash guard here, we can actually take off the fan belt, take off the bottom pulley, and it'll give us a lot better, room, and then we can actually, make sure we line everything up properly. So this has to come off, and the other cover. So again, no point in filming that. It's just a couple of talks. Once I've done that, we'll continue. We are getting there. We need to remove this pipe as well, because this metal pipe here is part of the actual engine mount. So we're just going to disconnect the plastic pipes either end, or the rubber pipes either end, disconnect the sensor going to it, and then we can take off the fan belt. You can just see the tensioner down there. Then we can support the engine, take off the engine mount, which will then allow us to take off the lower cover, which then will allow us to take off the bottom pulley. And then what we can actually do is see exactly what we're looking at. Get it all lined up. Double check the belts, because I know there's a couple of different belts for this car. So double check it, make sure it's right. And then, yeah, we get this thing not leaking again. Sorted. That pipe, and we removed the other one. So what I want to do now is I want to take off the engine mount. And that will also allow it a lot easier for me to take off the fan belt. I'm going to take off the actual mount on the car first, because then what I'm going to have to do is either jack it or lower the engine to get the bolts in down there for the actual mount on the engine. So we've got two 18 mils, two 16 mils, and two 10 mils. That will allow us to take off this part of the engine mount, the car side of the engine mount. The engine then will be free to move up and down. We have a jack in place and a jack and a piece of wood. We didn't have to take out the lower guard after all. Have to take down the lower guard after all. We just got a big block of timber and we're resting against the sump. That will allow us to do what we need to do. Once I take this off, we will then continue. Right, everything you take off, just leave the bolts on it or beside it. That way you know where they go and they can't get mixed up. This is what I was talking about, having to jack the engine up or down, depend on your car, because the bolts are actually right next to the leg of the car, and as you can see, you can get a spanner on there, but it's just easier if we can get a socket on there. So what we can actually do, now it's disconnected, we can actually jack this up, and now you can see, just with a few jacks, the engine lifting up, which will allow us, in this case, to now put a socket on there. And the ones down there we're going to have to drop the engine and do from the floor, but this one we can do from here. Lovely. Right, you can see the leaky water pump there. It's leaking just with no pressure on it whatsoever. Now what I managed to do is, there's 3 bolts on this and there's 16 mil. But I managed to get the 2 from the actual top, so it only leaves us 1 from the bottom. This is the pipe I was also talking about. So we're going to have to remove this 10 mil here, then remove the 16, take off this clip, and then that whole engine mount and pipe will move out of our way. That means we can then take off this cover. We can then get to, well, we can get to this now, but take off the fan belt, take off the bottom pulley, and then we can actually see the timing belt in all its glory. Pipe in the end, I just moved it to the side, as you can see, there it is, no harm. Now what we can actually do is take off the tensioner, or the fan belt. Now, good thing to do is, maybe if you're unsure of the way it goes, is take a few pictures with your phone and then take it off, and then at least you'll know exactly which way it goes. Now I'm going to try and do this one hand. If we can do it one hand, yeah, we can. Now, there we go, it's the fan belt off. So now what I need to do, take the bottom pulley off, and then we can take off this cover, the bottom cover, and we can see exactly what's going on with the belt or the water pump or whatever, but we can see it. This is where a really good powerful impact comes in. So we've got some splines, M10 splines, or if you're American, triple squares, M10 anyway. And because we got a good powerful gun, these will just come off really easy. Again, you don't need tools like this, but as you can see, it makes your life so much easier, and that's what it's all about. Work smart, not hard. Now, There we go. Now we can see the bottom pulley. So take off 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's another 2 at the top, so maybe 6, 10 mils. You can see there. Let's look how bad that is. And then the covers are off, and we'll see exactly what's going on. Right, look at that. The dog can see the rabbit. You can see exactly where it's leaking from, and all the lovely stuff it's left behind. So we're going to replace that all. No more leaking. Get this thing running. And then job's a good one, but just look at the state of it. Looks like it's been leaking for a while. But anyway, we'll get it sorted. Won't be an issue. Right, we got the bottom locking pin in, and I always like to mark it just in case. I normally mark it at the bottom, but I can't because as you can see it's all dripping, and no matter what I do, no matter how much I clean it, it's still going to be dripping. So I got it in, and I put 2 marks either side. You can see the pink marks there that I've put at the side. The top, same again, put the mark in. Now very simple, drill bits, very, very simple. There is special pins for it, but drill bits, the right size drill bits just work just as well. Now, it also does say on the old instructions that, or on my computer should I say, that there is a mark for the pump. Now I know people can say, well, it's a high pressure pump, you don't need it. I've just stuck a pin in there or a drill bit in there because there is a mark on the sheet, so hey, why not? I mean, it's not a big deal at the end of the day now, is it? And I've also marked it there as well, and marked it at the bottom, as you can just see there. So what I'm going to do now is just loosen this 13 mil off, and we can get the belt off. Right, it was actually a 15 mil, but this seems a bit seized. I can't. Normally they just come out. Get some Allen keys on it. Right, there we go. Bit weird, doesn't matter. Now just let me, I'm not going to be able to do this one-handed, just let me get this belt, well I might be able to if I can get it off there. Will it come off there? On the bottom? No, just let me get this belt off, and then yeah, we're good to go. Right, what did I say at the beginning? I'll give you all the time in the world. You might want to pause this for 10 minutes and you know, see if you can spot the difference. Yeah, wrong kit. Completely and utterly the wrong kit. I know belts stretch a little bit, but they don't stretch that much. Not that I've ever seen. Well, they might, but they certainly, the engine doesn't run very well. So there we go. Completely and utterly the wrong kit. The tensioner looks the same, the water pump looks the same, but the actual kit is wrong. Belt's obviously way too small. We only have 1 idler in this kit where we should have 2. And yeah, I mean the water pump and the tensioner are most probably the same. I'm not even going to try because at the end of the day it's the wrong kit, but they might be the same. But yeah, so now this rolls on for another day, if not maybe even another day, depending on how quick we can get these parts. Oh, the joys. Right, 2 days later, and I'm sorry if the wind's coming in because we're in the middle of a storm at the minute, but we have the new belt. That's the old belt. This is the new belt kit. As you can see, belt's a lot bigger. We have the other tensioners I was actually talking about. The bolts, very important. The water pump was the same, and the tensioner was the actual same, but the idlers, sorry, it was the idlers that were missing. A couple of the idlers were missing, and the belt was a hell of a lot smaller. So what I'm going to do now is, if I actually survive this storm, we're going to take off this idler, take off this idler, take off that idler, and take off the water pump. I'm going to do that off camera. Be careful when you take off tensioners, because on some cars, not all cars, they have a washer behind, or sometimes they can look identical both sides, but one side sticks out more than the other, which has to go towards the engine. So just be very, very careful when you take these out, because if you get them wrong, and obviously you can't mix up this one and say this one, but you can make it out of line, and obviously it's very important that it is in line. We can also see the water pump, the rock of the water pump. Hopefully it will come through on camera here if the wind isn't causing me issues, which it is. Now, what this is down to is people just replacing the belt and not replacing everything, because the kit for this particular car is very expensive. The belt is a hell of a lot cheaper. You can see these tensioners haven't been changed in a while. That tensioner hasn't been changed in a while, but the belt has, and even the bottom tensioner hasn't. So that's what's caused that. If whoever would have done this originally would put a water pump in it, I guarantee it wouldn't be leaking now, and you know, it could last another 20-odd thousand miles whenever the belt was due. But that was because they just replaced the belt. Never ever just replace the belt. Always replace the full kit. I hope you can hear me over all this wind and storm, but I am just in the process of cleaning where the water pump actually goes. But bear in mind, you've got an idler down here and the tensioner up here. Now you get new bolts with it, but the 13mm goes down to the idler and the 14mm goes up to the tensioner. Now here's the old water pump, and you can listen to this. Hopefully it'll come through on camera. Oh. Really, really bad, just because it hasn't been changed in I just don't know how long. And yeah. So once I've cleaned it, we'll put the water pump in. I'm going to put the idler here. I'm going to not put the idler on this one yet, and it just makes it easy to get the belt on. Right, we have the water pump in, and it's always a good idea when you put any pulleys or anything on, any tensioners, pulleys, anything, just spin it by hand to make sure it doesn't move, or it moves, it doesn't feel weird or anything like that. This one, again, all feels good. Now I might have to take this one off because the way I'm doing the belt, I don't loosen these, and it's a little bit harder, but it makes your life a lot easier in the long run, because there is adjustment on these, but I don't do it because it can mess other things up. But when you take this and say leave this one off, the belt does tend to go on a little bit easier. Once it's on, you can actually push it down and push that in place relatively easily. I'm going to put the other tensioner on here now, and I'm going to start putting the belt on. Now I'm not going to be able to film that because obviously, you know, my hands are going to get in the way. But yeah, you get the idea. Sorted. Right, hope you can hear me. It's absolutely pissing it down here. The wind, the rain, and absolutely everything. Now, as you can see, I've got it on, and I've got plenty of room here to push the belt down, just to push this on without causing any problems. I can even do it by hand lock. That's how much room I've got, without having to try and cross thread that bolt or absolutely anything. Now, what I ended up doing was very simple. That's why I always mark it. I pulled out the I got it tight around the water pump and the tensioner here, or the idler here, sorry. Got it down around the bottom pulley, came back up, so I got it all torqued all around from here. And the reason why you can do it is because once you get it around this pulley, it will hold itself, and then I can actually tighten it all the way down here. Then all the slack comes this side, which is what you need. You need all the slack to come to the tensioner side. What I had to do then is pull out the drill bit, so I'm just choking. I pushed this back half a tooth, which then allowed me to get this in. I pushed it back another half a tooth, got my lining marks back, got my drill bit back in the right place, and that gave me all the tension in the world, and I didn't have to remove any of these to try and get them in. And believe me, it's just so much easier doing it that way, and it only took a couple of minutes to actually get it on. It wasn't too bad. Sorted. So what I'm going to do now is tighten everything up. Again, I can't show you the procedure for this because you can't see, but once I do that, I'll show you exactly how to do that, and then we can test it. Lovely jubbly. Right, I did it a slightly different way because I had too much slack here. So what I had to do is I pulled the drill bit out again, and I turned this pulley one tooth so I could get this a lot. I took out this idler here, get this a lot tauter. Then pushed it back, and as you can see, we're slightly out of line, but it's not going to be an issue. This is now taut, this is now loose, as you can see here. Once I actually tension this up, what that's going to do is that is going to pull this pulley, and it's going to line it up perfectly. I'm going to leave the pin out, line them marks up, tension this correctly, and before I do anything, and I'm then going to see if all the pins slides in, and if the pins all slide in and the holes lined up when this is tensioned properly, that will just push that back and it won't be an issue. Then obviously you turn it by hand, you know, 4 times, 6 times, whatever you want, but at least a couple of times, just to make sure nothing's going to happen. If nothing happens, if it doesn't lock up, you're not going to do any damage. Now, let's say you got the timing slightly wrong. As long as nothing locks up as you turn it by hand, you're not going to do any damage. It might not start and it might sound horrible, but at least you're not going to do any damage. So once I get this tension in, it's very simple. You just get an Allen key in there, and just let me get the torch. Oh, hold on, let's torch here. And you can see the little arrow right there, and you can see the cutout right there. And I'm just going to turn that until that little arrow reaches that cutout, and that's the correct tension for the belt. Simple as that. And at the same time, it's going to push that back around and line that pulley up. Lovely. Sorted. Right, I'm going to try and film this, do it one-handed. It's going to be quite difficult, but as I turn that round, you can actually see that moving. Hopefully the camera caught that. Can you see that moving there? Hopefully you can. Yeah, it's lining up now. Lovely. This pin is now, there we go, and look at that, lined up lovely. Where's my drill bit? Haha! Sorted! Now the rain's come again, but as you can see, that's brought that back in line absolutely perfect. I'm going to double check, make sure nothing else has moved, and if it hasn't, lock it up, turn it by hand, and boom, sorted. Right, we are all good. It's all lined back up. I've turned it over plenty of times and it's not actually locking, which is fantastic. And the belt feels good, doesn't feel over tight. It's still lined up. It's all good. But the problem is, what I normally like to do now is start the engine. But I can't start the engine because all the fuel system is disconnected. And the reason why I like to start the engine is just to make sure everything is okay before I put too much stuff back together, because if it doesn't start, it means stripping more stuff and it's just annoying. Also, what I would love to have done with this is to start it and bleed the whole radiator system before I put everything back, just to make sure there's no leaks. But again, I can't do that because of the way the water system works. So what I'm going to have to do is kind of build this back together a long way, which I really don't like doing, and then start it and then see if there's an issue. And it just makes my life harder, because if there is an issue, it means I have to take a lot more off. So I'm just going to put the bottom pulleys, the bottom covers on, the water pipe going across, the engine mount, not fully, but just the engine mount on the engine, what else, the water system, and then yeah, we'll start this and see if we can bleed it, and fingers crossed it doesn't leak. I think now we're ready to start. I still haven't connected the water system yet, because I just want to make sure this starts and sounds okay. It's just being rested by the jack, so there's no engine mount. It's just enough on to start it. I've only quickly put the fuel system on. I think I have done enough to bleed the system, but time will tell in a second. I'm just really curious to see if it will start and what it sounds like. So let me try and get my hand in. And the answer to it is no, I haven't bled the system enough, but at least it started. So I'm going to rebleed this system, and yeah, at least it started and it sounded okay for the split second that it did start, which is a good sign. Right, so I rebled the system, and as you can hear, absolutely perfect. Now that is okay for that tension to be bouncing around like that, so don't worry about that. But as you can hear, it's absolutely perfect, which is good. So now what I got to do is bleed the air system and make sure there's no leaks before I kind of put everything on properly. Again, the joys. Also, I remember doing a time belt video a long time ago, and someone messaged me not that long ago actually on it and saying how stupid I was for starting it with no water in. You can start an engine with no water in, providing you don't start doing, try and doing 5,000 miles. Then you're going to be okay. For the couple of seconds that it starts, I can assure you it's absolutely fine, no problem whatsoever. You don't want to be doing it for too long for obvious reasons, but for a couple of minutes, it's not an issue. It really isn't an issue. On some modern cars, it might not allow you to start it if the water system's too low, but that's other cars, but it's not going to do any damage. It just kind of prevents damage. So there we go. That is it. It is working. I'm going to now try and put the coolant bottle on, but do it in such a way where, because I don't want to have to take it back off to put everything back on again, and I need to make sure it's not leaking, so it's going to be a bit awkward. Let me kind of get all this mess arranged, and then we'll see where we go from there. Right, put some coolant in, got the heater on, I'm waiting for the system to bleed. The only issue is I don't know if we've got enough fuel to actually bleed the system. I really don't know. And every single light is on the dash, every single light is flashing, as you can see. but they were already on before, and that's why I said at the beginning of the video, I don't know why the foot pedal light's on. Oh, it's an automatic, of course. So, but I'm sure if I actually turn this off and start it again, yeah, that light will stop flashing because I've actually topped it up. That's the only light. Well, that light was flashing, but all the other lights were on, so I'm not bothered about that. I just want to make sure this heats up properly and it doesn't leak, most importantly. Time will tell. I'd be nice and fill up the windscreen wiper bottle, and it is just absolutely pissing it out. So I'm not going to do that again. Coming from under there. The radiator isn't leaking, or the coolant system isn't leaking, this is leaking. Just trying to get another light off the dash, thought it'd be easy, and yeah, all the joys. Right, just as I feared, we've run out of fuel. No more fuel. I thought we would. We got fuel, we've got some lovely heat, it's circulating. I think we're good, and it's not leaking, which is more important. If you see in there, hopefully you can kind of see it swirling around. If the camera, maybe it doesn't look like it, but it is circulating, I can feel it, which is good. There's no leaks, which is good, apart from obviously this leaking that I put in there. Engine sounds good. I think we're good to go. Test drive next. Right, driving down the road, heater plug light flashing, it says service engine, and the gearbox is terrible. I mean, it's in limp mode now, but it's just jerky even when it wasn't. Yeah, so this is another garage car, but I don't know what they want me to do. I've kind of done my job, and we'll see what they want me to do about all the other things. But it's driving, it's working, it's not leaking. So my job is over, unless they want me to check everything else out. So as always, please like, share, comment and subscribe. Don't forget, links up here, links down below. But most importantly, don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one. Sorted.